Good morning. Happy Saturday. How you guys doing today? Welcome to the Mirror Point, where reality checks itself, where illusion meets confusion and somehow becomes enlightenment, right? So, this is just a weekly reminder that you're not actually who you think you are. Sorry. Anyways, today we're going to talk a little bit about science and how it relates to idealism, and how actually idealism has more scientific support than materialism, actually. And this is coming from scientists themselves. And we've spoken quite a bit about folks like Michael Levin. So I wanted to kind of do some more reaction on his videos. Michael Levin is a biologist, and he's doing some really breakthrough experiments studying, morphogenetic spaces, transcriptional spaces, and cognition and cognitive light cones within very simple organisms to sort of find out, a little bit more about intelligence and about consciousness in general. And he talks a lot about Platonic forms. And he did an interview here on Lex Friedman, I think earlier this week, and I was watching it. And so we were going to kind of take a look at some of these videos, or this one interview, actually, sorry, and just kind of speak on it. Sophia's with me. She's just getting ready with her computer. She's setting her computer up and everything like that, so it'll work a little better than it has in the past. I know we've had a lot of issues with connection and things like that. And we're getting better and better at this whole situation. So that's what we're going to do, man. We're going to try to step this show up so to have a better, view for everybody and everything like that. So yeah, man. So I'm ready to get into this, so let's go ahead and I'll add this to it, and we'll just kind of pick up from the beginning and start doing a little reaction in real time. Then later on, we'll bring folks on the stage and we can do more discussion about it. So y'all hang on, stay tuned, take a look at the video if you haven't seen it already. This is on the Lex Friedman podcast. It's called Reality is an Illusion. The Brain is an Interface to a Hidden Reality. It's just kind of a snippet from the long form interview. This is kind of like, I guess, 20 minutes or so. And so we'll just do a little reaction on this and see what we can pull from it here. So I'll go ahead and start the video from the top.
Weird ideas that you've been writing about. You've mentioned it a few times, the Platonic space. So there's this Ingressing Minds paper where you describe the Platonic space. You mentioned there's an asynchronous conference happening, which is a fascinating concept because it's asynchronous. People are just contributing asynchronously.
So what happened was this crazy notion, which I'll describe momentarily. I have given a couple talks on it. I then found a couple papers in the machine learning community called the Platonic representation hypothesis. And I said, that's pretty cool. These guys are climbing up to the same point where I'm getting at it from biology and philosophy and whatever. They're getting there from computer science and machine learning. We'll take a couple hours. I'll give a talk. They'll give a talk. We'll talk about it. I thought there were going to be 3 talks at this thing. Once I started reaching out.
And before we go on, I don't know if everyone in the audience here is familiar with Platonic forms, what that actually means, what he's actually referring to. And it's kind of good to maybe break this down, because I'm not sure if he does in this particular section. He does in another part of the video. But he's appealing to Platonic forms as a way to speak about underlying patterns in nature. Now, Platonic forms, also called ideas, are one of the most influential concepts in Western philosophy. It actually came from Plato. And the idea is kind of like a metaphysical shaper. And is applied to metaphysics, theology, mathematics, and now in cognitive science and things like that. And so modern theories like Michael Levin's morphogenetic fields is how it applies, right? So what Plato would argue is that objects we perceive in the physical world are just imperfect copies of perfect non-physical forms. So a form would be eternal. I mean, in its classical way, a form is eternal, unchanging, non-material, and it's sort of like the perfect pattern or blueprint of a thing is basically what that means. So Platonic forms are timeless, perfect patterns that structure the physical world and allow for true knowledge about things, right? That's what it really is. So anyways, I'll keep going.
Out to people for this. Everybody sort of said, I know somebody who's really into this stuff, but they never talk about it because there's no audience for this. So I reached out to them. And then they said, yeah, I know this mathematician, or I know this, economist, whatever, who has these ideas, and there's nowhere we can ever talk about them. So I got this whole list, and it became completely obvious that we can't do this in a normal, we're now booked up through December. So every week in our center, somebody gives a talk. We kind of discuss it. It all goes on this thing. I'll give you a link to it. And then there's a huge running discussion after that. And then in the end, we're all going to get together for an actual real-time discussion section and talk about it. But there's going to be probably 15 or so talks about this from all kinds of disciplines. It's blown up in a way that I didn't realize how much undercurrent of these ideas had already existed, that we're ready. Like now is the time. And I think this is like, I've been thinking about these things for, 30 plus years. I never talked about them before because they weren't actionable before. There wasn't a way to actually make empirical progress with this now. This is something that Pythagoras and Plato and probably many people before them talked about. But now we're to the point where we can actually do experiments. And
so looks like he's talking about it's moving from philosophical armchair kind of stuff into what he calls actionable or experimental. So you can do empirical testing and verifying to see if these sort of Platonic forms actually do supervene or ingress onto structures like cells and simple things that we can test with, And so it's really interesting that, now he can speak about it, whereas before he couldn't, because there's no way to really test these things out. It's all sort of in the realm of metaphysics. But now he's able to actually apply these things. And what he's learning, as we'll find out, is they're sort of flying into the face of a lot of assumptions that we've been making in biology and science and things like that. So it's really interesting. Now, the mystics have known these things all along for many, they've been talking about this stuff for thousands of years. And Sophia can definitely speak to that. What do you think, Sophia?
Hi.
And how are you doing, by the way?
I am doing very well. I had to do a whole computer overhaul. And I think it worked, y'all.
Good.
But anyway,
good.
I think this stuff is very fascinating and interesting because, like I said in the comments, I had this very experience of that concept when I did DMT, right? I felt like reality was a feeble attempt at recreating actual reality. You see what I'm saying? Like we were.
Yeah, I remember you told me that. You told me that a few years ago. I remember you told me that.
Yeah, it was like we were just like babies playing with blocks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, this is very fascinating stuff to see, science that's coming out that seems to suggest just that. So yeah, I'm very fascinated with this stuff.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
It's really fascinating because it's an intersection. So, science and mysticism is now sort of intersecting, and philosophy, metaphysics, all this stuff is intersecting together, which is really exciting for folks who are interested in that kind of stuff, And I think that the application is going to be for everybody. That's the really good thing about that. So
yeah,
anyways,
and I know it's going to be kind of hard to grasp at first and understand, and I'm still trying to understand it, because I mean, Michael Levin is no joke. The way he expresses himself, you know, it takes some real studying to understand this stuff. And I will be the first to say I don't understand half of the stuff he's saying fully, right? But that's okay. We're here learning together.
Right. Well, stay conscious, but not too conscious, right?
Oh, I like your hat too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm having a bad hair day. My hair has its own intelligence, all of its own. So I'm gonna let it work itself out. Anyways,
We're making a difference in our research program.
You can just look it up, Platonic Space Conference. There's a bunch of different fascinating talks. Yours first on the patterns of forms and behavior beyond emergence, then radical Platonism and radical empiricism from Joe Dietz, and patterns and explanatory gaps in psychotherapy. Does God play dice from Alexei Tolchinsky, and so on. So let's talk about it. What is it? And it's fascinating that the origins of some of these ideas are connected to ML people thinking about representation space.
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is that while I'm currently calling it the Platonic space, I am in no way trying to stick close to the things that Plato actually thought about. In fact, to whatever extent we even know what that is, I think I depart from that in some ways. And I'm going to have to change the name at some point. The reason I'm using the name now is because I wanted to be clear about a particular connection to mathematics, which a lot of mathematicians would call themselves Platonists, because what they think they're doing is discovering, not inventing as a human construction, but discovering a structured, ordered space of truth.
Yeah, now this is a good question, because a lot of mathematicians like Roger Penrose, Max Tegmark, people like that, they tend to think that reality comes out of mathematical equations. But my whole confusion is that doesn't seem right, because it seems to me that mathematics is a language that we invent. And it's used to describe nature. So it's descriptive, not prescriptive. I've always understood it that way. But they talk about things like, mathematical structures and geometries and things like that. But still, those are human constructions. They're abstractions. And a lot of materialists have now see the problem with trying to ground stuff into matter as we traditionally understood matter as standalone existences. But we now know they don't stand alone. They actually bottom out to, 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. And then it becomes like this abstraction, this sort of guesswork thing that we do. And we use math to kind of like try to trace it down beyond that. And so we got things like quantum field theory. Basically, turns into like some kind of probability distribution that you can describe with mathematics. And, a lot of folks will say, well, that's the math we're talking about, that it comes out of the math. But something about that still doesn't seem right to me. I more or less agree with Michael Levin that the mathematics comes from a source code, like a pattern that's not just, it's not just static, like how Plato described the forms, like it's just an eternal static thing. But I think Michael Levin is going to talk about how the Platonic forms he's talking about are things that actually do things. They're actually not static. They're actually very dynamic, kind of like Donald Hoffman's theory on dynamic conscious agents. And so consciousness is that sort of dynamic sort of understanding, right?
Right.
So I don't know. What did you think about that, if anything?
No, I agree. And mathematics is definitely a language that we use, or a system that we use to describe a reality. So I totally agree with that. We come up with that. And yes, we're able to predict certain things, and we're able to make it work within that axiom. But yeah, I would agree with you.
Right. Yeah. And so we have I don't want to, was that Jurgen? I don't want to chop your name up. You said idealism of ideas and materialism are not mutually exclusive. Well, if we redefine words, sure, but we're talking mainly about traditional or popular materialism as we understand it, popular physicalism, as in things are the only thing fundamental is matter and energy. And so that's kind of what we're addressing here. But anyways, I'm going to keep going on with the video.
Let's put it this way. In biology, as in physics, there's something very curious that happens, that if you keep asking why, then something interesting goes on. Let's well, I'll give you two examples. First of all, imagine cicadas. So the cicadas come out at 13 years and 17 years. Okay. And so if you're a biologist and you say, so why is that? And then you get this explanation for, well, it's because they're trying to be off cycle from their predators. Because if it was 12 years, then every 2 year, every 3 year, every 4 year, every 6 year predator would eat you when you come out, right? So, and you say, okay, cool. That makes sense. What's special about 13 and 17? Oh, they're prime. And why are they prime? Well, now you're in the math department. You're no longer in the biology department. You're no longer in the physics department. You're now in the math department to understand why the distribution of primes is what it is. Another example, and I'm not a physicist, but what I see is every time you talk to a physicist and you say, hey, why do the leptons do this or that, or the fermions are doing whatever? Eventually the answer is, oh, because there's this mathematical, this SU8 group or whatever the heck it is, and it has certain symmetries and these certain structures. Yeah, great. Once again, you're in the math department. So,
only in America, people trample on each other to get a good deal. Exactly one.
And why is he saying that? Is he saying that because that's a pattern?
And math is where he's applying the Platonic, the pattern, the Platonic forms, because it's kind of like how in physics, math has a relation to physics in that way. So he's saying that math has also a relation to biology, it seems like. So it's kind of like intersecting between a lot of different things, not just metaphysics, also physics, and also biology. So yeah, let's see. We have a comment. Sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, but to me, the run-of-the-mill philosopher that describes themselves as an idealist, naive realist, or whatever else, take their formal understanding. I don't understand that. Sorry, wait. Oh, way too seriously. Formalization doesn't get you anywhere, not even in mathematics. It does not get you to certainty, doesn't transcend vagueness. I think I can understand that to a certain extent. But let's see what Michael Levin is saying. I don't know if that's what he's really saying or if you're even applying that to him or not. I don't know.
So something interesting happens is that there are facts that you come across. Many of them are very surprising. You don't get to design them. You get more out than you put in a certain way because you make very minimal assumptions. And then certain facts are thrust upon you. For example, the value of Feigenbaum's constant, the value of natural logarithm E, these things you sort of discover, right? And the salient fact is this: if those facts were different, then biology and physics would be different.
Hey, hello, Von Eric. It's been a while since I've seen you. How you doing, brother? And we're going to open up the stage. Hopefully you'll join us at some point.
Hi.
Yeah.
Right? So they matter, they impact instructively, functionally, they impact the physical world. If the distribution of primes was something else, well, then the cicadas would have been coming out at different times. But the reverse isn't true. What I mean is, there is nothing you can do in the physical world to change E, as far as I know, to change E or to change Feigenbaum's constant. You could have swapped out all the constants at the Big Bang, right? You can change all the different things. You are not going to change those things. So this, I think, Plato and Pythagoras understood very clearly that there is a set of truths which impact the physical world, but they themselves are not defined by and determined by what happens in the physical world. You can't change them by things you do in the physical world, right? And so I'll make a couple of claims about that. One claim is, I think we call physics those things that are constrained by those patterns. When you say, hey, why is this the way it is? It's because this is how symmetries or topology or whatever. Biology are the things that are enabled by those. They're free lunches. Biology exploits these kinds of truths. And really it enables biology and evolution to do amazing things without having to pay for it. I think there's a lot of free lunches going on here. And so I show you a Xenobot or an Anthrobot, and I say, hey, look, here are some amazing things they're doing that tissue has never done before in their history. You say, first of all, where did that come from? And when did we pay the computational cost for it? Because we know when we paid the computational cost to design a frog or a human, it was for the eons that the genome was bashing against the environment getting selected, right? So you paid the computational cost of that. There's never been any Anthrobots. There's never been any Xenobots. When did we pay the computational cost for designing kinematic self-replication and, all these things that they're able to do? So there's two things people say. One is, well, it's sort of, you got it at the same time that they were being selected to be good humans and good frogs. Now, the problem with that is it kind of undermines the point of evolution. The point of evolutionary theory was to have a very tight specificity between how you are now and the history of selection that got you here, right? The history of environments that got you to this point.
So I think what the Anthrobot and Xenobot experiment is doing is trying to remove the constraints of natural evolution to just test out and see what's going to happen when those things are out of the way, to see if these patterns will manifest regardless. And so he's doing these experiments to see if there's some sort of embedded intelligence rather than just, like he said, banging against the environment in order to come up with these solutions in nature. So that's kind of like an ingenious approach to trying to figure out what's going on. Like, just don't really tell things what to do, but just sort of get rid of the constraints and let it do its thing all on its own and just see what's going to happen. That kind of makes a lot of sense.
If you say, yeah, okay, so this is what your environmental history was, and by the way, you got something completely different. You got these other skills that you didn't know about. That's really strange, right? And so then what people say is, well, it's emergent. And they say, what's that? What does that mean? And they say, well, besides the fact that you got surprised, right? Emergence is often just means I didn't see it coming. There was something happened. I didn't know that was going to happen. So they say, what does it mean that it's emergent? And people say, well, and there are many emergent things like this. For example, the fact that gene regulatory networks can do associative learning. Like, that's amazing. And you don't need evolution for that. Even random genetic regulatory networks can do associative learning. I say, why does that happen? And they say, well, it's just a fact that holds in the world. Just a fact that holds. So now you have an option. And you can go one of two ways. You can either say, okay, look, I like my sparse ontology. I don't want to think about weird Platonic spaces. I'm a physicalist. I want the physical world, nothing more. So what we're going to do is when we come across these crazy things that are very specific, like, Anthrobots have 4 specific behaviors that they switch around. Why 4? Why not 12? Why not 1? Like 4? Why 4? When we come across these things, just like when we come across the value of E or Feigenbaum's number or whatever, what we're going to do is we're going to write it down in our big book of emergence. And that's it. We're just gonna have to live with it. This is what happens. We're just,
oh my God, like that's like religion. That's like saying, well, if we don't understand it, God did it. Like, emergence done it. It's like a shortcut to just get around actually trying to figure out what's going on. We don't want to.
I actually did want to address some of these comments that have been left. If you don't mind.
Absolutely. Which one?
He says, what materialism doesn't remove the ability to be careful about the divide between logic and existential predicate. Is that what it says? Sorry, my eyes. So, yeah, no one said that. But what you do have to realize, though, is that materialism is also just a philosophy. You do get that, right? So just wanted to say that and point that out. And what else did he say? Idealism of ideas and materialism are not mutually exclusive. In all ages, there have been people who understood that formalization can't get you there. And what else?
Well, idealism to me isn't really a formalism. I think it's just an acknowledgement that, or it's a metaphysical axiom that consciousness is the fundamental of reality, right? And it's based on the epistemic view that all we really know is consciousness. All we really know.
But formalization isn't the issue. The issue is that Levin's work, right? What he found is that bioelectric pattern empirically contradict the materialist assumption that matter self-organizes blindly. And he showed this, and we went over a whole show about that. He shows that there's goal-directed pattern memory, error correction, and I don't know this word, teleonomic constraint. Either way it goes, he showed that these organisms had no brain, and even without a brain, there was cognition that we normally would only ascribe to something that's conscious, right? And that's kind of the whole point about his work. So I'm not sure what that guy is really saying.
Well, the existential predicate is a statement whose truth requires that something exists. So I guess what they're saying is that we can make formal assumptions, but we know that consciousness is the way we know we exist. At least we know experience exists because we're experiencing. So even if you doubt existing or doubt you're experiencing, you have to exist in order to have that doubt.
Right. So we're back to that same dead horse. On to the next one. That sounds a lot like objective ethics in the comments. Let's move on.
Yeah, please. So which was the next one you want to address?
Now, let's just move on to the video.
The video. Okay, cool.
Trying to go over that dead horse over and over.
There's some cool surprises. When we come across them, we're going to write them down. Great. It's a random grab bag of stuff. And when we come across them, we'll write them down. That's one. The upside is you get to be a physicalist and you get to keep your sparse ontology. The downside is I find it incredibly pessimistic and Mysterian, because you're basically then just willing to make a catalog of these amazing patterns. Why not instead? And this is why I started with this Platonic terminology. Why not do what the mathematicians already do? A huge number of them say, we are going to make the same optimistic assumption that science makes, that there's an underlying structure to that latent space. It's not a random grab bag of stuff. There's a space to it, where these patterns come from. And by studying them systematically, we can get from one to another. We can map out the space. We can find out the relationships between them. We can get an idea of what's in that space. And we're not going to assume that it's just random. We're going to assume there's some kind of structure to it. And you'll see all kinds of people, well-known mathematicians that talk about this stuff, Penrose and then lots of other people who will say that, there's another space physically, and it has spatial structure, it has components to it, and so on. We can traverse that space in various ways. And then there's the physical space. So I find that much more appealing, because it suggests a research program, which we are now undergoing in our lab. The research.
Yeah, so it's a way. It's something you can build on. You can start to actually test things out and do science and see if you can make any sort of predictions and observations on these kind of ideas, rather than sitting in our philosophical armchair and saying, "Oh, that's just crazy talk." We can actually put the shit to the test and either put it to bed once and for all, or we can find out something, learn something from that shit, instead of just clinging on to our metaphysic like physicalism or something. Like he said, you can do that. You can start cataloging all your emergent properties and saying, oh, well, these are just emergent properties, whatever that means. And you just list them in a category and ignore them. Or you can actually test them and find out if there's something to it, and I think this kind of reveals that even scientists sometimes have an emotional need to be attached to their metaphysical philosophies and stuff, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Joe, how's it going, man?
Hey, Joe.
So let's keep on trucking, because this is what 46 minutes actually. So let's keep it going.
Program is everything that we make: cells, embryos, robots, biobots, language models, simple machines, all of it. They are interfaces. They are all physical things are interfaces to these patterns. You build an interface, some of those patterns are going to come through that interface. Depending on what you build, some patterns versus others are going to come through.
And even like your LFM model, this part reminds me of your LFM model, because even the LFM model is a pattern. I mean, even the interface is a pattern. So it's almost like the patterns are relating to other patterns, you know, and it's relating through frequencies, like through oscillating, you know, energies and stuff like that. And that makes a lot of sense, that these patterns of energy, or patterns of expressing the energy, and the interfaces are the same thing. We're also just patterns, you know.
Exactly.
So that's really wild. That means that all there is, and that's almost like an ontological realization that all there is patterns all the way down.
Yes.
Yeah.
The research program is mapping out that relationship between the physical pointers that we make and the patterns that come through it, right? Understanding what is the structure of that space, what exists in that space, and what do I need to make physically to make certain patterns come through. Now, when I say patterns, now we have to ask what kinds of things live in that space. Well, the mathematicians will tell you, well, we already know. We have a whole list of objects, you know, the amplituhedrons and the, you know, all this crazy stuff that lives in that space. Yeah, I think that's one layer of stuff that lives in that space. But I think those patterns are the lower agency kinds of things that are basically studied by mathematicians. What also lives in that space are much more active, more complex, higher agency patterns that we recognize as kinds of minds. That behavioral scientists would look at that pattern and say, well, I know what that is. That's the competency for delayed gratification or problem solving of certain kinds or whatever. And so what I end up with right now is a model in which that latent space contains things that come through physical objects, so simple patterns, right? So facts about triangles and Fibonacci, you know, patterns and fractals and things like that.
But wait a minute, I thought there were no physical things, that everything's just in our mind, remember?
Okay, but I just wanted to clarify some things just for my own understanding, so I don't stay stupid.
Yeah.
Just to get this right. So when he's saying what he's saying, what are we talking about? You know, are we talking about that what we call physical objects aren't fundamental entities? Are we saying that their interface is generated by stable patterns? The same way, for example, a phone screen isn't the system itself. It's the presentation layer produced by deeper processes. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
So matter equals the appearance. Pattern is the underlying structure. And then consciousness is the interpreter of the structure, right?
Right.
So when we're talking about Michael Levin's bioelectric networks as pattern memories, we're saying cells behave according to stored pattern level information, not local chemistry. And then the thing is the pattern. And then cognitive science, the brain doesn't see objects. It detects predictable regularities and then generates an interface. And in quantum physics, God dang, I'm dyslexic. Quantum physics. What we call a particle is a stable excitation pattern in a field, not a thing, a formation. Okay. I'm kind of getting it. So basically, objects aren't fundamental, patterns are. The physical world is just the interface consciousness uses to interact with those patterns. You know, that makes a lot of sense, because that's just kind of how I function as a mystic. And it's real fascinating to see this laid out.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the other way around. Like it's information leads to pattern, leads to behavior, not energy leads to matter, leads to pattern. So cells kind of respond to electrical gradients, these fields and
Yes.
programmed goals, memory-like pattern instruction. So these patterns organize the energy usage. You know what I mean?
Yes. And that's why I get it now. Why you contacted me that day, like, Sophia, I think I found something that matches your LFM and it goes right along with it. Damn it. Hold on.
Right. That's right. I had to let you know.
What the hell is that? Go away.
Go away. Stop selling me some virus protection.
Yeah,
So
sorry. I had some weird ass pop up. Yeah, because my LFM already frames consciousness as frequency, and observation shaping matter. So yeah, it's very, very similar. And my model is intuitive and philosophical, like I always say. It's just something that I came to the conclusion of by recognizing patterns, and that's kind of what I do. I operate on pattern recognition.
Yeah,
so a lot of
that's
times,
what a frequency is. Frequency is a patterned oscillation, and patterns shape and structure a wave, for example. So
right. And the reason I operate like that, I've been learning this, it's because of severe trauma and my nervous system. So a lot of times my nervous system will pick up on patterns, especially if it's danger or it thinks that there is danger. And then my mind will catch up with it later. Like my nervous system picks up on it first. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm learning this through therapy, how your nervous system works when you have PTSD and things like that. And that's why people with PTSD develop this type of stuff. It's because of your nervous system.
Yeah, that's why, like in my book, by the way, guys, go out and get my book, man. I put the link to my book in the description below, so check it out. It's only $5. I just wanted to put it out there and get everybody to take a look at the viewpoint, the perspective, and get familiar with the perspective that we promote. But that's what it is that I have a section in the book about feel good, be good. And basically it's more than just how you have a lot of self-help that say, if you just say these mantras, I am successful, or I am well, or I am feeling good today. That's not enough. You have to actually emotionally feel it, because your emotion is your body. So your emotions will resonate in your body. And when you feel that way and you have the mental as well, then those things can actually change your life. Then you start taking actions that you need to take, and you start doing things a lot better. It's not good to just say things. It's also good to feel things as well. And if you can master that, if you can somehow get into that. And so I go into exactly how that can be done, and I won't give it away here. Get the book and check it out.
Get the book.
Get the book. I put a lot of time and research into it. So
you beat me to the punch.
Also, if you make more complex interfaces, such as biologicals, but importantly, not just biologicals, but let's say cells and embryos and tissues, what you will then pull down is much more complex patterns that we say, that's a mind, that's a human mind, or that's a snake mind, or whatever. So I think the mind-brain relationship is exactly the kind of thing that the math physics relationship is. That in some very interesting way, there are truths of mathematics.
Dude, he's looking at him like, man, you were trying to sell me some bullshit right now. Like when he said that, he's like, are you serious? No, he's going to come back and ask him a little bit about that.
They kind of haunt physical objects, right? In a very specific functional way. And in the exact same way, there are other patterns that are much more complex, higher agency patterns that basically inform living things that we see as obvious embodied minds.
Okay, given
in
how weird and
form.
complicated this
Yeah.
what you're describing is, we'll talk about it more, but you got to ELI 5 the basics to a person that's never seen this. So again,
He's like, man, I don't
you
know what you're
mentioned
talking
things like
about.
pointers. So the physical object
What the fuck
themselves
are
or
you
the
talking
brain is a pointer to that platonic space. What is in that platonic space? What is the platonic space?
about?
What is the embodiment? What is the pointer?
Yeah. Okay. Let's try it this way. There are certain facts of
I don't
mathematics.
blame him though, but
So
that
the
person.
No,
distribution of
I feel what Michael Levin's going through, because sometimes I'll be trying to talk about this stuff and people are like, you got to tell me, what the fuck do you mean by, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean by forms? What do you mean by,
No,
it's like you have to.
that's why I'm actually feeling the other guy, because when I first watched this video for the first time, I was like, huh? What is he?
Yeah.
What is he?
Yeah. It's almost like he just assumes everybody knows what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
like what the hell, dude? Like, we're not on that level. Slow down now.
For real.
prime numbers, right? That if you map them out, they make these nice spirals. And there's an image that I often
Fibonacci.
show, which is a very particular kind of fractal. And that fractal is the Halley map, which is it's pretty awesome that it actually looks very organic. It looks very biological. So if you look at that thing, that image, which has very specific complex structure, it's a map of a very compact mathematical object. That formula is like.
And I like how Lex Friedman went and pulled up where his team or whoever put this video together, get illustrations to help us see what he's talking about. Because imagine if there weren't those pictures right there.
And he put little notes right at the moment when I was like, what the fuck is Michael Levin saying? And then he popped up a note describing, like explaining what he meant. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, like, come on, man. Like, that's why people start thinking you're sitting on some bullshit when you start talking about things that's way over your head. You're like, oh man, what are you talking about, for real?
Z cubed plus 7. It's something like that. That's it. So now you look at that structure and you say, where does that actually come from? It's definitely not packed into the z cubed plus 7. There's not enough bits in that to give you all of that. There's no fact of physics that determines this. There's no evolutionary history. It's not like we selected this based on some, from a larger set over time. Where does this come from? Or the fact that I think about the way that biology exploits these things. Imagine a world in which the highest fitness belonged to a certain kind of triangle, right? So evolution cranks a bunch of generations and it gets the first angle right, then cranks a bunch more generations, gets the second angle right. Now there's something amazing that happens. It doesn't need to look for the third angle, because you already know. If you know two, you get this magical free gift from geometry that says, well, I already know what the third one should be. You don't have to go look for it. Or as evolution, if you invent a voltage-gated ion channel, which is basically a transistor, right, and you can make a logic gate, then all the truth tables and the fact that NAND is special and all these other things, you don't have to evolve those things. You get those for free. You inherit those. Where do all those things live? These mathematical truths that you come across that you don't have any choice about. You can't, once you've committed to certain axioms, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that is now just, it is what it is. And so what I'm saying is, and this is what Pythagoras was saying, I think, that there's a whole space of these kinds of truths. Now he was focused on mathematical ones, but he was embodying them in music and in geometry and then things like that. There are the space of patterns, and they make a difference in the physical world, to machines, to sound, to things like that. What I'm extending it, and what I'm saying is, yeah, and so far we've only been looking at the low agency inhabitants of that world. There are other patterns that we would recognize as kinds of minds, and that you don't see them in this space until there's an interface, until there's a way for them to come through the physical world.
So that's how he's detecting the patterns, is through the way they're expressed through the structures. And seeing like those truth tables he was talking about, like the analogy of the triangle, like somehow nature figures the rest out. Like it'll use evolution to kind of build a basic structure, and then it'll kind of just intelligently figure the rest out, which is where the patterns come in, where the form comes in, I guess. That's the consciousness part. At least that's the way I understand it.
interface, the same way that you have to make a triangular object before you can actually see the rule, what you're going to gain, right, out of the rules of geometry and whatever, or you have to actually do the computation on the fractal before you actually see that pattern. If you want to see some of those minds, you have to build an interface, right? At least if you're going to interact with them in the physical world, the way we normally do science. As Darwin said, mathematicians have their own new sense, and like a different sense than the rest of us. And so that's right. Mathematicians can perhaps interact with these patterns directly in that space. But for the rest of us, we have to make interfaces. And when we make interfaces, which might be cells or robots or embryos or whatever, what we are pulling down are minds that are fundamentally not produced by physics. So I don't believe that. I don't know if we're going to get into the whole consciousness thing, but I don't believe that we create consciousness, whether we make babies or whether we make robots. Nobody's creating consciousness. What you create is an interface, a physical interface through which specific patterns, which we call kinds of minds, are going to ingress, right? And consciousness is what it looks like from that direction looking out into the world. It's what we call the view from the perspective of the Platonic patterns.
What do you think about that?
I think it's true. Physical things are interfaces through which consciousness expresses itself. He's saying it all complicated and it's hard to follow, but that's what he's saying when you break it down into the most simplistic way of saying it.
So we're not really creating consciousness when we give birth to children. We're not creating anything, really. We're not creating the consciousness. The consciousness just uses the embryo and develops it. As it develops, it starts to view the world through consciousness. So consciousness sort of supervenes, or the physical supervenes on it. So he's using the word ingress, so it ingresses onto.
And he also used the language. He said that whenever we're creating, or making new bodies or whatever, or making anything, robots, it's pulling down minds. He said he used the word pulling down, and it kind of reminds me of my. I'm still working on this. I haven't rolled this out yet. But my hierarchy of consciousness, he's saying it's from the top down. You're pulling it down from somewhere else, right?
Right.
That's what I noticed when he said that word pull down. That's actually what he's saying. It's from the top down.
Well, what do you think this says about artificial intelligence then? Could we be pulling down minds and we're not even know what we're doing? Like, it seems like you should be really careful. Like, there's no way to predict what kind of mind could come out of a system like a computer, like a really intelligent, pattern, like an artificial intelligence sort of machine. You could be pulling down a mind.
Well, like I said, we've discussed this before, and I think that, the interface would have to be just right. I'm not sure that we're there yet. If it does happen, it would definitely be I don't think it could just pop into consciousness. Like he said, we don't create consciousness. But that's just another way of saying that consciousness doesn't emerge from the material, right?
Right. It chooses the material. So it's almost like it's the other way around. So
it creates its own interface. It's basically like, if you want to get from point A to point B faster than your fucking legs, you create an automobile, which is another type of interface that you can use to get there quicker. And that's basically what he's saying is happening, right?
Yeah. I get that. Yep. Exactly.
Just to clarify, what you're saying is a pretty radical idea here. So if there's a mapping from mathematics to physics, okay, that's understandable and intuitive, as you've described. But what you're suggesting is there's a mapping from some kind of abstract mind object to an embodied brain that we think of as a mind,
Yeah.
as us fellow humans. What is that? What exactly? Because you said interface, you've also said pointer. So the brain, and I think you said somewhere a thin interface.
A thin client. Yeah, the
thin
brain.
client.
The brain is a thin client. Yeah.
Thin client. Okay, so you're a brain is a thin client to this other world.
Yeah.
Can you just lay out very clearly how radical the idea is?
Sure.
Because you're kind of dancing around. I think you could also point.
You know, a lot of these ideas sound kind of crazy because of our culture.
But that's what I was gonna say. Like, he's talking, the way he puts emphasis on the word radical, but yet to someone like me, it's very natural. It's just naturally how I understand it, intuitively. Like, you know what I mean? And for him, it is so radical because we've been so indoctrinated to think this way, and that has been the leading, theory. But again, I would like to remind people like him that classical materialism is, after all, only a philosophy. The hard problem of consciousness, coined by Chalmers, has not been solved. So, to be fair, our position and what Michael Levin is proposing is just as coherent, if not more so. And modern science is going in that direction. So at the very least, we can say that both sides are very coherent, right? And that should kind of nip it in the bud. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm leaning more towards materialism, or I'm leaning more towards this. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how we, move ahead. That's how we explore and discover more shit.
That's right. That's right. And that's why we love this topic, and it's for us, it's like we're at the cusp of a paradigm shift. It's like we're shifting in our culture, and people don't really appreciate it. It's really hard to appreciate because a lot of this stuff comes from philosophers, and now from people like Michael Levin, who speak in ways that maybe people don't really understand so much, very easy to get with, especially when we come from a culture, like you said, that we've been indoctrinated into this philosophy of classical materialism, and it says it does feel like we are collectively converging onto something. Yeah, I see that too. Yeah. It's totally. It's really awesome to be alive at a time like now, to see all this.
Yes, happening. We're seeing a cool shift for real.
Yes, that's right.
To Donald Hoffman, and kind of who speaks of an interface to a world. So we've only interact with the quote unquote real world through an interface. What is the connection here?
Yeah. Okay. A couple of things. First of all, when you said it makes sense for physics, I want to show that it's not as simple as it sounds, because what it means is that even in Newton's boring sort of classical universe, long before quantum anything, Newton's world, physicalism was already dead in Newton's world. I mean, think about what that means. This is nuts, because already he knew perfectly well. I mean, Pythagoras and Plato knew that even in a totally classical deterministic world, already you have the ingression of information that determines what happens and what's possible and what's not possible in that world, from a space that is itself not physical. In other words, it's something like the natural logarithm E, right? Nothing in Newton's world is set to the value of E. There is nothing you could do to set the value of E in that world. And yet, that fact that it was that and not something else governed all sorts of properties of things that happen. That classical world was already haunted by patterns from outside that world. This should be like, this is wild. This is not saying that, okay, everything was cool, physicalism was great up until maybe we got quantum interfaces, or we got consciousness or whatever, but originally it was fine. No, this is saying that it was that worldview was already impossible, really, from a very long time ago.
It was dead on arrival. As they say, it was dead on arrival. but somehow it became so culturally ingrained, I think, because it was so expedient and useful. So it was like a useful fiction, so to speak, you know.
Already knew that there are non-physical properties that matter in the physical world.
This is a chicken or the egg question. You're saying Newton's laws are creating the physical world?
That is a very deep follow-on question that we'll come back to in a minute. All I was saying about Newton is that you don't need quantum anything. You don't need to think about consciousness. You already, long before you get to any of that, as Pythagoras, I think, knew, already we have the idea that this physical world is being strongly impacted by truths that do not live in the physical world. And when
which truths are we referring to? Are we talking about Newton's laws, like mathematical equations?
Mathematical facts. So, for example, the actual value of E. Or,
like very primitive mathematical facts.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are, if you ask Don Hoffman, there's this like amplituhedron thing that is a set of mathematical objects that determines all the scattering amplitudes of the particles and whatever. Right? They don't have to be simple. I mean, the old ones were simple. Now they're like crazy. I can't imagine this amplituhedron thing, but maybe they can. But all of these are mathematical structures that explain and determine facts about the physical world, right? If you ask physicists, hey, why, this many of this type of particle? Because this mathematical thing has these symmetries. That's why.
So Newton is discovering these things. He's not inventing.
This is very controversial, right? And there are, of course, physicists and mathematicians who disagree with what I'm saying for sure. But what I'm leaning on is simply this. I don't know of anything you can do in the physical world you're around at the Big Bang, you get to set all the constants. Mm-hmm. Set physics however you want. Can you change E? Can you change Feigenbaum's constant? I don't think you can.
Is that an obvious statement? I don't.
Yeah, it seems that's the only thing I try to understand isn't mathematics the language that just describes reality? Is it something we're inventing, or is it something that's being discovered? I guess what he's saying is these mathematical forms exist out there, and we're just discovering them and turning them into a language.
Yeah, I think that's true, because I was going to say both are true in a way, right? Because patterns are out there and they're mathematical patterns, and we discover them to the best of our ability. Again, like what I said earlier, is babies doing blocks. And
right.
We, create the language and the system, but it's still based on the patterns, that exist already.
Right.
I think that's more accurate, not saying what you said is inaccurate. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. It's just a question I have, It's like something I'm trying to figure out.
I don't even know what it means to change the parameters at the start of the Big Bang.
So physicists do this. They'll say, okay, if we made the ratio between the gravitation and the electromagnetic force different, would we have matter? How many dimensions would we have? Would there be inflation? Would there be this or that? Right? You can imagine playing with it. There are however many unitless constants of physics. These are the kind of like knobs on the universe that you could in theory be different, and then you'd have different physics. You'd have different physical properties.
You're saying that's not going to change the axiomatic systems that mathematics has.
What I'm not saying is that every alien everywhere is going to have the exact same math that we have. That's not what I'm claiming, although maybe, but that's not what I'm claiming. What I'm saying is you get more out than you put in. Once you've made a choice, and maybe some alien somewhere made a different choice of how they're going to do their math, but once you've made your choice, then you get saddled with a whole bunch of new truths that you discover that you can't do anything about. They are given to you from somewhere, and you can say they're random, or you can say, no, there's a space of these facts that they're pulled from. There's a latent space of options that they come from.
Yeah, this is, again, he's talking about the Platonic forms that, it'll fill in the gaps for you, like a free lunch, so to speak. So it goes back into the truth tables, which is really interesting. That's one of the things that he's evidencing to back up or support his conclusions here.
So when your E is exactly 2.718 and so on, there is nothing you can do in physics to change it.
And you're saying that space is immutable.
I'm not saying it's immutable. So I think Plato may or may not have thought that these forms are eternal and unchanging. That's one place we differ. I actually think that space has some action to it, maybe even some computation to it.
But we're just pointers. Okay, that's
well. So let's I'll circle back around to that whole thing. So the only thing I was trying to do is blow up the idea that we're cool with how it works in physics, no problem there. I think that's a much bigger deal than people normally think it is. I think already there you have this weird haunting of the physical world by patterns that are not coming from the physical world. The reason I emphasize this is because now when I amplify this into biology, I don't think it sort of jumps as a new thing. I think it's just I think what we call biology are systems that exploit the hell out of it. I think physics is constrained by it, but we call biology those things that make use of those kinds of things and run with it. And
so biology, like biological systems, cells that make up bodies, structures, animals, people like us, that's just biology exploiting these forms, exploiting the hell out of them, like he said.
Okay, can you explain that a little better? I'm not fully getting that.
Right. So he was saying that physics will use these mathematical truths to describe, what's going on, in the world of physics, like constraints. There's constraints to how reality works. We can't fly, for example. Gravity constrains us to some extent, as an example. So that's how physics will describe these Platonic forms if they do that. Whereas in biology, you just see it. Biology is just exploiting these forms. So you see the manifestation within structures like cells and bodies and other systems. So it's like so you can actually see it in action, so to speak.
Right. And he had to say it that complicated.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I'm saying. You got to really listen to this guy and follow him.
So I just think it's a scaling. I don't think it's a brand new thing that happens. I think it's a scaling, right? So what I'm saying is, we already know from physics that there are non-physical patterns, and these are generally patterns of form, which is why I call them low agency, because they're like fractals that stand still, and they're like prime number distributions. Although there's a mathematician that's talking in our symposium that's telling me that actually I'm too chauvinistic even there, that actually even those things have more oomph than even I gave them credit for, which I love. So what I'm saying is those kind of static patterns are things that we typically see in physics, but they're not the full extent of what lives in that space. That space is also home to some patterns that are very high agency. And if we give them a body, if we build a body that they can inhabit, then we get to see different behavioral competencies that the behavior scientists say, oh, I know what that looks like. That's this kind of behavioral, this kind of mind or that kind of mind. In a certain sense, I mean, yes, what I'm saying is extremely radical, but it is a very old idea. It's an old idea of a dualistic worldview, right? Where the mind was not in the physical body and that it in some way interacted with the physical brain. So I just want to be clear, I'm not claiming that this is fundamentally a new idea. This has been around for forever. However, it's mostly been discredited. And it's a very unpopular view nowadays. There are very few people in the, for example, cognitive science community or anywhere else in science that like this kind of view. Primarily, and already Descartes was getting crap for this when he first trotted out, is this interaction problem, right? So the idea was, okay, well, if you have this non-physical mind, and then you have this brain that presumably obeys conservation of mass energy and things like that, how are you supposed to interact with it? There are many other problems there. So what I'm trying to point out is that, first of all, physics already had this problem. You didn't have to wait till you had biology and cognitive science to ask about it. And what I think is happening in the way we need to think about this is coming back to my point that I think the mind-brain relationship is basically of the same kind as the math-physics relationship. The same way that non-physical facts of physics haunt physical objects is basically how I think different kinds of patterns that we call kinds of minds are manifesting through interfaces like brains.
So it's like a relation. So rather than a dualism, I think what he's saying is that it's more like a relation, because everything is essentially just a pattern, but the patterns relate to each other. So you can kind of see from your brain, or for your perceptual, interface, you can see other patterns. You can do observations of other things. So it's almost like what they call dualistic idealism, where everything is mind, but there's these very real categories that you can look at as dual. Is that something like maybe he's describing? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I had to step away because I had to go pee.
Oh, all right. That's why I wear diapers. Then I ain't got to step away. I can just comfortably sit here and continue the conversation.
That's just gross. My nigga, that's gross.
Well, awakening isn't easy, but at least it's free. Okay.
Prove or disprove the existence of that world, because it's a pretty radical one.
Yeah.
Because this physical world we can poke. It's there. It feels like all the incredible things like consciousness and cognition and all the goal-oriented behavior and agency all seems to come from this 3D entity.
Yeah, I mean,
and so like we can test it, we can poke it, we can hit it with a stick.
Yeah, sort of.
Makes noises.
Sort of. I mean, so Descartes got some stuff wrong, I think. But one thing that he did get right, the fact that you don't know what you can poke and what you can't poke. The only thing you actually know are the contents of your mind, and everything else might be, and in fact, what we know from Anil Seth and Don Hoffman and various other people, it's definitely a construct. You might.
Right. So this gets back to the hard problem of solipsism, where, all you really know is your experience of the world. And, that's where you base everything on. So we can sit back and just think that the way reality appears in our mind, we can take that too serious and forget, and it becomes a blind spot. And we forget that the only thing we truly know is that we're having an experience, and the rest of the stuff is just could be an illusion. It could be it's not that it's an illusion as in it's not real, but it's real, but it just appears in a way that maybe it's not really that way on the outside. Maybe
it may be imperfect. It may be missing information. It's not the whole picture. Not an illusion as, it doesn't exist. It's completely fake. Physical reality.
That's what we run around and say, right?
Yeah, I guess some people think that. But it's just like, I always use metaphors and examples because I really talk from like my own experience, and I try to relate to these things through my own experience. So I use like examples for example, right? If you know somebody, right? Just some guy, you just met them for the first time. The way that I pretty much evolved is a little bit differently due to trauma. Mm-hmm. So what happens is my nervous system picks up on shit that I consciously haven't even picked up on. And
intuition.
Even though that person may appear completely peaceful, smiling in your face and saying all the right things, Sophia don't operate like that though. Sophia see shit before she sees it. And so
Sophia don't play that shit.
The way my shit works, I'm going to detect the micro expressions. I'm going to read between the pauses that you just made. And if it's weird in any kind of way, my nervous system is going off like, okay, alert, alert, alert. And then it's going to translate that in a way, it's going to integrate that information. and my brain is going to come up with some shit, whatever the hell it comes up with. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say it always works that way. And I don't do this on purpose. It's just how it happens.
No.
So in other words,
I was going to say
the point is, a person can stand in front of you and look like a human being and actually be thinking about wanting to cut your fucking throat. And just by looking at that person, you'll never know. And so that's what we're saying. Just because reality appears a certain way, the physical reality, that doesn't mean that it necessarily is telling you the whole fucking story, right?
Yeah. And people like Donald Hoffman, they take it even deeper than that. It's like even just physical reality as we perceive it itself is even not the way it appears. But what you're saying is absolutely true. And I was going to say that I've read some studies that they'll tell you, like psychology, they'll tell you that the main way people communicate is with body language, not even with words. It's really with body language is the main way that you convey information.
That's one of the main ways, but also like tone of voice,
and all of that. But then they say a lot of people though, they never develop that intuitive intelligence, like to see those things you're talking about, because they're given to the words so much. They listen to so much of the words, and they want to be lied to. Like some people just want to hear what they want to hear, and they hear what they want to hear from people, and they're not paying attention to the little cues that you could pick up on,
Yeah, but that's because we're very intellectual nowadays. It's all about the intellect, and intelligence is all we focus on. And because of that, we miss a lot of the other shit,
It's more important. Exactly. I agree.
Be on drugs, and you might wake up tomorrow and say, my God, I had the craziest dream of being Lex Friedman. Amazing.
It's a nightmare.
Who knows?
It's a ride,
right? But you see, it's not clear at all that the physical poking is your primary reality. That's not clear to me at all.
I don't know. That's a obvious thing that a lot of people can show is true. To take a step to the Descartes, I think therefore I am, that's the only thing you know for sure, and everything else could be an illusion or a dream. That's already a leap. I think from a basic caveman science perspective, the repeat.
All right, here we go with the
I'm like, another one.
Here we go.
Cool experiment is the one that most of intelligence comes from here. The reality is exactly as it is. To take a step towards the Donald Hoffman worldview takes a lot of guts and imagination and stripping.
See, I don't think so.
I mean, it may take guts, but definitely not imagination, because some of us actually experience it that way. And like, it's just, look, I'm just starting to learn how to accept that not everybody can see your vision or has your same experience, and that's okay.
I think it has to do with, I think it's an emotional thing too, because it's kind of like an ego killer, if you think about it.
Well, it is.
People don't want to really do that,
If you embrace this idea that says, well, you're just, an interface,
experience, right?
That it's being used by consciousness to express itself. That kind of makes it seem like you don't have any free will, right?
You don't have any identity or free will or nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. We don't like the idea of not being in full control.
See, that's a direct ego killer. Yeah.
Everything about life teaches us that we're not in control. That's why the hell we die. What can you do to prevent your death? Not a damn thing.
That's right.
The reality is exactly as it is. To take a step towards the Donald Hoffman worldview takes a lot of guts and imagination and stripping away of the ego and all these kinds of.
See, even he recognized that. I mean, that's my problem. That's the thing that it bothered me when I first started looking into this stuff years and years ago, was really getting into grips with that.
But see, that's the thing that I would like people to realize. the ego is exactly that. It's just a tool. It's just an interface. It's not your actual identity. Of course, the ego is needed. That is your interface. That is how you get around in this physical world. That's how you know you got to take steps to walk and all this other shit, right? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, is that really who you are? No, it's not really who you are. The ego shouldn't define, how you feel towards your partner or your child, or the remorse you feel when you see a homeless person,
your relationship with the world. Right. And see, I think the world could be a better place if we actually, maybe if we did strip down our ego a little bit and we did sort of take a look at it different. Maybe we live in a different world.
I wouldn't even say that it needs to be stripped down necessarily. I think that what needs to happen is there needs to be a balance, a good balance.
Yeah.
And just like if you're wearing a shield, right? When you're going to war, you're wearing the shield to get you through the war. But then when you come home with your family, you take that off. Like, why would you keep that on? Right?
Logan, didn't you guys promise more movies? We sure did. We sure did. I can show you mine.
What did I miss, Logan?
No, last week we had Brooklyn Lou on, and he was talking about the whole drama between us and objective ethics, and he was saying that people don't need to get so mad about this stuff, that it's all entertainment and stuff like that. And so I told him, yeah, we need more boobies on our YouTube channel.
Well, I'm gonna tell your wife, Logan.
The reality is exactly as it is. To take a step towards the Donald Hoffman worldview takes a lot of guts and imagination and stripping away of the ego and all these kinds of processes.
I think you can get there more easily by synthetic bioengineering in the following sense. Do you feel a lack of X-ray perception? Do you feel blind in the X-ray spectrum or in the ultraviolet? I mean, you don't. You have absolutely no clue that stuff is there. And all of your reality as you see it is shaped by your evolutionary history. It's shaped by the cognitive structure that you have, right? There are tons of stuff going on around us right now of which we are completely oblivious. There's equally all kinds of other stuff which we construct, and this is just modern cognitive science that says that a lot of what we think is going on is a total fabrication constructed by us. So I think this is not I don't think this is a philosophy. I mean, Descartes got there from a philosophical point. That's not the leap I'm asking us to make. I'm saying that depending on your embodiment, depending on your interface, and this is increasingly going to be more relevant as we make first augmented humans that have sensory substitution. You're going to be walking around, your friend's going to be like, oh man, I have this primary perception of the solar weather and the stock market because I got those implants. And what do you see? Well, I see the traffic of the internet through the Trans-Pacific Channel. We're all going to be living in somewhat different worlds. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're going to become better attuned to other beings, whether they be cells, tissues. What's it like to be a cell living in a 20,000 dimensional transcriptional space? Okay.
Wow. I was looking at something this morning. They some labs in China, they developed these contact lenses that can you can see the hair on an ant's leg.
Wow.
That's how good it is. And it doesn't even need power. All it does is you shine light. If you just turn a light on, it'll focus just like your eyes normally do. When you turn light on to see things better. If you turn a light
They're
on,
always coming up with cool shit like that, don't they?
Yeah, and they said they got limbs now that you can lift with your finger. You can lift tons of weight just with your finger. Like they have this little fiber they put on your finger, and they just kind of put it right there. And they showed where you can actually lift like tons of weight. Like they're thinking about putting clothes together so people can just do all kinds of physical, crazy, Incredible Hulk type shit.
That's crazy. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I want that in my life. Shit. Somebody gonna bitch slap your ass to oblivion, man.
Yeah, you'll be knock your ass out to the moon somewhere.
Hell no.
Hell no.
to novel beings that have never been here before, that have all kinds of crazy spaces that they live in. And that might be AIs, it might be cyborgs, it might be hybrids, it might be all sorts of things. So this idea that we have a consensus reality here that's independent of some very specifically chosen aspects of our brain and our interaction, we're going to have to give that up no matter what to relate to these other beings.
I think the tension is, and absolutely, in this idea that you're talking about of sort of almost, I think you've termed it cognitive prosthetics, which is different ways of perceiving and interacting with the world. But I guess the question is our human experience, the direct human experience, is that just a slice of the real world? Or is it a pointer to a different world? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because the claim you're making is a really fascinating one, compelling one. It's a pretty strong one, which is there's another world into which our brain is an interface to, which means you could theoretically map that world systematically.
Yeah, which is exactly what we're trying to do. I mean,
right. But it's not clear that world exists.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so that's the beautiful part about this, and this is why I'm talking about this now, where I wasn't, about a year ago, up until a year ago, I was never talking about this, because I think this is now actionable. So there's this diagram that's called a map of mathematics.
Yeah, I was on Lou's channel trying to talk about that, and they were asking me that, like, how do you know it exists though? Like, you can't point to it. It's like people who are trying to prove God. Like,
well, it's kind of like gravity. We know gravity exists, but we cannot directly observe it, right? But just try jumping out of a window and tell me if it's real or not.
Exactly. It's a relation type thing.
Yeah. And they basically try to show how all the different pieces of math link together, and there's a bunch of different versions of it. So there's two features to this. One is that, what is it a map of? Well, it's a map of various truths. It's a map of facts that are thrust on you. You don't have a choice. Once you've picked some axioms, you just, here's some surprising facts that are just going to be given to you.
Yep. So let me get this straight. You're telling me I don't have to spend countless hours consolidating our company's financial data anymore?
But the other key thing about this is that it has a metric. It's not just a random heap of facts. They're all connected to each other in a particular way. They literally make a space. And so when I say it's a space of patterns, what I mean is it is not just a random bag of patterns, such that when you have one pattern, you're no closer to finding any other pattern. I'm saying that there's some kind of a metric to it, so that when you find one, others are closer to it, and then you can get there. So that's the claim. And obviously, this is not everybody buys this, and so on. This is one idea. Now, how do we know that this exists? Well, I'll say a couple of things. If that didn't exist, what is that a map of? If there is no space, if you don't want to call it a space, that's okay. But you can't get away from the fact that, as a matter of research, there are patterns that relate to each other in a particular way. What's the final step of calling it a space is minimal. The bigger issue is, what the hell is it a map of then if it's not a space? So that's the first thing. Now that's how it plays out, I think, in math and physics. Now in biology, here's how we're going to know if this makes any sense. What we are doing now is trying to map out that space by saying, look, we know that the frog genome maps to one thing, and that's a frog. Turns out that exact same genome, if you just take the slightest step with the exact same genome, but you just take some cells out of that environment, they can also make xenobots with very specific different transcriptomes, very specific behaviors, very specific shapes. It's not just, they do whatever, and then they have very specific behaviors, just like the frog had very specific properties.
Yeah, this is the part I really think is interesting. This is kind of like the meat and potatoes. When they created these xenobots and stuff, this is like proof of concept, this is really what piqued my interest,
We can start to map out what all those are, right? Make that basically try to draw the latent space from which those things are pulled. And one of two things is going to happen in the future. And so this is, come back in 20 years and we'll see how this worked out. One thing that could happen is that we're going to see, oh yeah, just like the map of mathematics, we made a map of the space. And we know now that if I want a system that acts like this and this. Here's the kind of body I need to make for it because those are the patterns that exist. The anthrobots have 4 different behaviors, not 7 and not 1. And so that's what I can pull from. These are the options I have.
Is it possible that there's varying degrees of grandeur to the space that you're thinking about mapping? Meaning it could be just like with the space of mathematics, might it strictly be just the space of biology versus a space of like minds, which feels like it could encompass a lot more than the just biology.
Yeah, except that I don't see how it would be separate, because I'm not just talking about an anatomical shape and transcriptional profile. I'm also talking about behavioral competencies. So when we make something and we find out that, okay, it does habituation, sensitization, it does not do Pavlovian conditioning, and it does do delayed gratification, and it doesn't have language, that is a very specific cognitive profile. That's a region of that space, and there's another region that looks different, because I don't make a sharp distinction between biology and cognition. If you want to explain behaviors, they are drawn from some distribution as well. So I think in 20 years or however long it's going to take, one of two things will happen. Either we and other people who are working on this are going to actually produce a map of that space and say, here's why you've gotten systems that work like this and like this and like this, but you've never seen any that work like that, right? Or we're going to find out that I'm wrong, and that basically it's not worth calling it a space because it is so random and so jumbled up that we've been able to make zero progress in linking the embodiments that we make to the patterns that come through.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I think a lot of headway has been done with those anthrobots, man, because they've actually mapped on like very specific behaviors and stuff like that they didn't really program in, and that's what's really fucking awesome about that shit. But yeah, at the end of the day, once we have experiments and once it's really brought to market, so to speak, like into where people use this kind of shit, like say, telling cancer to go away,
Yeah.
prosthetics, like he was saying, mental prosthetics, and applying that to your body and stuff like that. I mean, this will be proof of concept. Then it'll be no longer a weird idea anymore. It'll be practical.
Yeah. He's a lot like a mystic in his own way. And I will explain, because I know he's probably not going to want to be compared to that. Right. But what he's actually doing, he's looking for the lawful structure behind cognition itself. That's what he's doing. Right. And if such a structure exists, which I clearly think it does, then cognition isn't a byproduct of matter at all. It's a deeper pattern that matter interfaces with.
Well, so how does this relate to the concept of God? Because I could see a lot of Christians use something like this as proof of their God or something. Like, how
the way I would look at that is, I wouldn't really give a shit if somebody were to say, okay, let's use the word God in its place, right? But the only reason I have an issue with that is because religions are man-made, and the God of the Bible, the Abrahamic gods in general, that is clearly a God that is man-made and in the image of people, right? And so I am just not with that, because that's more like the false God, the idol that we look up to, that we worship, which is to perceive matter as the ultimate reality. And there is no underlying nothing except for this Abrahamic God, right? Which is based on ego. So
yeah, well, I can see a lot of people trying to reinterpret it, like but they'll have a problem because it'll be special pleading, because what they'll do is they'll say, yeah, but the Bible even says that man was made in the image of God, so it's kind of like the same thing we're seeing here. But then if you look at it deeply, though, it says only man was made in God's image. It doesn't say animals and nature itself.
Well, actually, it does. It says in the Bible to observe nature if you want to understand the mind of God. So there you go. I mean, the Bible does have truths in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, throw the whole thing out because it's too confusing. Let's just do it.
You don't need it.
We
already got it. Yeah.
Like, fuck all that.
We got it here. We got it. We don't need all that. We got it.
So that's my opinion on that. When it comes
to the problem of evil.
Well, the problem of evil, I would say, is simply the unconscious not made conscious. It's incoherence, right? There's a lack of integration,
right?
Or shadow integration, like Carl Jung would call it. Yeah, that's about all there is to it, I guess. I think.
And I got a chapter on that in my book. It talks about the integration, and I reference a lot of Carl Jung. So
that's my favorite guy.
I know, me too, man.
Just to be clear, I mean, from your blog post on this, from the paper, I mean, we're talking about a space that includes a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It includes human, what is it, meditating? Steve. Hello, my name is Steve. AI systems, so all the space of computational systems, objects, biological systems, concepts. It includes everything.
Well, it includes specific patterns that we have given names to.
Right.
Some of those patterns we've named mathematical objects. Some of those patterns we've named anatomical outcomes. Some of those patterns we've made psychological types.
So every entry in an encyclopedia, old school Britannica, is a pointer to this space.
There is a set of things that I feel very strongly about because the research is telling us that's what's going on. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that I see as hypotheses for next steps that guide experiment. So what I'm about to tell you, I don't, these are things I don't actually know. These are just guesses that you need to make some guesses to make progress. I don't think that there are specific, or I don't know, but it doesn't mean that there are going to be specific Platonic patterns for this is the Titanic and this is the sister of the Titanic and this is some other kind of boat. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is in some way that we absolutely need to work out, when we make minimal interfaces, we get more than we put in. We get behaviors, we get shapes, we get mathematical truths, and we get all kinds of patterns that we did not have to create.
Well, that's creation. It's almost like he's saying nature is doing creation. And I mean creation in the manifestation type creation. Like it's like, again, we start talking about God as the creator. I could see someone definitely taking something like that and running with it to say, and like you, I'm kind of like you. I don't care. Like you can use whatever label you want, but it's going to cause it's going to cause a huge paradigm shift in our understanding of things.
Yeah, but just like we said earlier, he's basically saying that, we're not really creating anything. We're just discovering shit, right?
Mm-hmm, right. Nature is creating shit, though. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Like in a very goal-oriented way.
We discovered
we didn't know they were coming. We didn't have.
I was just saying, we discover the structures, but we don't actually generate them.
Right.
We make minimal interfaces. We get more than we put in. We get behaviors, we get shapes, we get mathematical truths, and we get all kinds of patterns that we did not have to create. We didn't micromanage them. We didn't know they were coming. We didn't have to put any effort into making them. They come from some distribution that seems to exist that we don't have to create. And exactly whether that space is sparse or dense, I don't know. So, for example, if there is, some kind of a Platonic form for the movie The Godfather, if it's surrounded by a bunch of crappy versions and then crappier versions still, I have no idea, right? I don't know if the space is sparse or not. I don't know if it's finite or infinite. These are all things I don't know. What I do know is that it seems like physics and for sure biology and cognition are the benefits of ingressions that are free lunches in some sense. We did not make them. Calling them emergent does nothing for a research program. Okay, that just means you got surprised. I think it's much better if you make the optimistic assumption that they come from a structured space, that we have a prayer in hell of actually exploring. And in some decades, if I'm wrong, and it says, you know what, we tried, it looks like it really is random, too bad, fine.
Is there a difference between...
So, yeah, because we talk a lot about, we talk to people who really just promise that, consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. And this seems to fly in the face of that idea, definitely. Because he's saying emergence really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't explain shit. Emergence is just a word we put on some stuff that's surprising.
Right, that ain't good enough. That's just like saying something is because it is. Oh well, that just happened. It just happened. It happened. It came out of it like that, and it just is the way it is. That don't mean nothing.
Right, because when you ask them the specifics, like how does consciousness arise from the brain? Why does consciousness arise from the brain? They can never tell you. It becomes a hard problem, The hard problem of consciousness comes in,
Yes, sorry, my daughter is
yeah, I saw her.
talking about
You didn't create that consciousness.
she want to go outside with shorts on. It's 60 degrees. I'm like, girl, put on some damn pants.
60 is 51 down here.
Yeah, it's warmed up slightly over here. Yeah. But it's 60 degrees is still a little chilly.
Yeah, it is.
Like, can we one day prove the existence of this world? Is there a difference between it being a really effective model for connecting things, explaining things, versus like an actual place where the information about these distributions that we're sampling actually exists, that we can hit with a stick?
You can try to make that distinction.
Damn.
But I think modern cognitive neuroscience will tell you that whatever you think this is, at most, it is a very effective model for predicting the future experiences you're going to have.
So all of this that we think about as physical reality is just as a nice, convenient model.
I mean, that's not me. That's predictive processing and active inference. Like, that's modern neuroscience telling you this. That this isn't anything that I'm particularly coming up with. All I'm saying is the distinction you're trying to make, which is like an old school, like realist, kind of view, that is it metaphorical or is it real? All we have in science are metaphors, I think. And the only question is, how good are your metaphors? And I think as agents living in a world, all we have are models of what we are and what the outside world is. That's it. And the question is, how good is it a model? And my claim about this is, in some small number of decades, this will either give rise to a very enabling mapping of the space for AI, for bioengineering, for biology, whatever, or we are going to find out that it really sucks because it really is a random grab bag of stuff, and we tried the optimistic research program, it failed, and we're just going to have to live with surprise.
All right, so I think we've seen enough of the video.
I just wanted to ask a question too, though.
Yeah.
Just to get this right about the space mapping. When he's talking about the space, he's talking about the underlying patterns that we can't see, right? And he's saying that once we get a handle on what's going on in that unseen space, and we can actually integrate it properly, we can create more coherence. We can be more aware of certain things, right? That's basically what he's saying. Okay. So yeah, I think that this man is really onto something. I don't know how the hell he done it. But
I know. I think he figured all that out.
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, seriously, that man is brilliant. And I believe that we're going to get there because, like I said, mystics are already doing this intuitively. And that's literally how it works. Like, I become intuitively aware of the field or the space, and then my brain integrates it, interprets it, and I can use that information in a practical way in my actual physical experience. And that's how it works. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect. Obviously, I'm not sitting here saying that it works perfectly, because if it did, I wouldn't have done some of the fucked up things I did. But
I think that's all of us. Yeah, we could all say that.
It's definitely a work in progress. I mean, a work in, progress. That's right. That's right.
Well,
English, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Work in progress. Yep.
And so, yeah.
Well, one of the analogies he tells that's really good to understand what he's getting at with these invisible patterns that really truly exist. He says it's kind of like this. It's kind of like, imagine a scientific scenario, a science fiction scenario where you've got these creatures that live way up under the ground. You know, they've never come to the surface to see humans or see animals on the surface of the earth. They all live under the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're so different than us. When they come up on the surface, all they can detect with their instruments is patterns. So they detect us as patterns. And so you've got a lot of critics, a lot of people down there under the earth that are like, wait, well, do they really exist, or what are you really talking about? And then they say, no, they exist. They're real. And really the only way we know they exist is because they have certain patterns that we can detect, these relationships, and they live like these patterns exist for like a little under 100 years. They do these specific things, they procreate, and then these other patterns come out of those and stuff like that. And they describe it that way. But, you know, some people under the ground would be like, I don't know, that sounds kind of weird. And then we don't see them either. You know, we can't really see them either. So we're just out of their range. It's almost like an analogy you gave of like, maybe you walk by an anthill or something, and an ant, he just sees your foot like this giant thing. Right. He has no idea what it is. He just doesn't know what it is, you know, how to relate.
In other words, you're sharing a space, but your perception is completely different from the perception of the ant, because the ant may just catch one point on your foot, you know. It's, what is that called? Scale.
Scale.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, scale invariance.
Yeah. And so you, on the other hand, you look down and you see the whole ant, right? But that's just kind of how I always envisioned it. So it's just open to the possibility that things aren't necessarily what they seem to be.
Yeah.
Right? That
and
there could be more.
Some physicists talk in terms of dimensions, like dimensional beings. Like they'll
That's
say,
what it is. It's a dimension. It's a different dimension.
A different dimension, exactly. And then
people think when they hear dimension, they think some outer space shit or whatever. Or like really, a dimension is just a difference of a different perspective, really.
Yeah, and what you're able to peer into. Like they were saying, like on a two-dimensional creature could never really detect a three-dimensional creature like us, because they live on like a straight line. So they would just crawl that straight line. And if you were to go into that line, maybe fold the paper or create a hole or something, they wouldn't see you do that, but they would just see the effect of it. They'd see that their world had changed because of this pattern that created this thing, but they couldn't really detect it. Or because it's not two-dimensional, it's three-dimensional.
Yeah, if you were in front of let's say, what are those things called that they dump trash into? Dumpsters.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always lose words sometimes. Sorry. You know, you're standing in front of a dumpster, right?
Yep.
And let's say your position is fixed and you can't move, right? And all you're going to see is that perspective. So to you, that dumpster only has one side, right? But if you go above it, like a bird, you could see all dimensions of that dumpster. And that's basically all we're talking about. That's all it is.
Well, welcome to the mirror
I'm talking to a kindergarten class, but I'm sorry. I make sense of shit as I go along in my own head. And that's how I kind of talk to myself. So I keep myself from being stupid.
Well, welcome to the mirror point, where your beliefs come to get existentially roasted. That's what we're all about. So I put the link in there. We have a few minutes. I have a few minutes free we can, if we want to share the stage with us, talk, ask any questions, or tell us what you thought about the video, Michael Levin, about the topic in general. You can do that. I mean, we've got a few minutes. I'm going to try to get out here in a little bit, man, and face this weather and be a little more active. But I've got some time.
Face the weather. You have to say it like
face the weather. Oh, I can't stand this cold weather. It's rainy and cold, and it's humid down here, so it's really bone chilling type of cold. It's
just stop complaining.
It's just horrible.
Like,
man.
What do you want?
It's 70 degrees. Are you crazy? We can't take that.
Get out of here. What do you want? You want it to be 110 degrees again? Where you can basically fry an egg on the fucking sidewalk?
Man,
no, thank you. Let it snow.
No way. I'm telling you, man. Oh, and I'd also say here publicly that Objective Ethics, who was our co-host for a while until last weekend, he did agree to for us to do a debate.
Right, Joe?
Yeah, hey, Joe.
Sorry, I saw his
that harsh Florida we put up here. Yeah, those harsh Florida winters are infamous. I know, man. Tell me about it. It's horrible.
Get out of here.
But yeah, hopefully me and Objective Ethics, we're gonna debate about objective morality in January. Hopefully, unless things changed or whatever. But he seemed to be pretty.
I mean, objective reality would actually fit very nicely into this topic. That's why, man, he might as well conform.
Yeah.
Cross on over, because that's literally what we're talking about. We're talking about trying to figure out if there are, unseen patterns, lawful unseen patterns, the immutable laws of nature, so to speak, but also the unseen ones, right? And if that is the case, and if we find out at some point that it is the case, and we're able to map the space, then that would actually be a very good explanation for what objective morality actually is, right?
That's right. Because it goes back to language and things like that. But we have a question here. A pattern I think gets neglected that I've been working with recently is drift. It shows up everywhere in the form of error. Have you ever noticed it? Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I was even thinking about patterns as a form of life in a way, because they do things, they seem to promote themselves. And it's like, have you ever got a pattern of negative thinking that kind of like spirals into this bigger negative thinking? And all of that could be an error. It could be a form of error, and that you can detect that pattern. And as a mystic, I'm sure you see it. You can see those sort of things and identify them
all the time. But I think that's just part of it. That's just part of consciousness evolving, and it's going to make mistakes and get better as it goes along. That's what kind of puts us in the category of being heretics, because we're basically saying, if you were to replace the word consciousness with God, we're saying it's imperfect, it's evolving, right? And so there are going to be mistakes, and each time a mistake is recognized through self-reflection, which is what I believe consciousness does. It has its own light. It reflects on itself. And when a mistake is seen, it can self-correct, because that's even like that with your own psychology. Once you lose the ability to self-reflect and self-correct, the same error pattern is going to continue, and we call that a loop, right? Or a trauma loop, or an error loop, right? And so, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because sometimes being aware of certain things makes the errors dissolve away, or even the suffering can dissolve away. Like if you're just aware, just being aware of it, just saying to yourself.
And that's what the Bible is actually talking about when it says you have to name the demon to cast it out.
Right,
when you go into the etymology of the word demon, it has to do with your thought process. It's a thought process. It's not an actual entity. And so once you analyze, see where the thought entered, what happened, how did it change your mood, for example, or whatever, or your perspective, it can happen very subtly, right? That's the thing. You can be manipulated or influenced in so many fucking ways till it ain't even damn funny, right?
Yeah.
And then once you identify it though, right, through meditation or being aware of your thoughts, then it's just like it dissipates because you've identified it. You can throw it out now. You got full clarity, and you basically went in there and did an error system correct, right?
Yeah, that's really deep,
System
man, because
error correct.
You think about your own mind, how many different entities inhabit and haunt your mind. Like if you look at it that way, like if you look at these patterns as actual entities or cognitive agents, like Donald Hoffman calls them or whatever, it really kind of like explains the analogy of the demon, you know, the typology of the demon, you know, as this real creature that is doing evil or whatever, but it could just be like the consciousness, a negative conscious thing that either for individuals or even for a society, like, you know, how they say Satan is the god of this world or whatever. Like it could be just the way you could spin that is to say that, oh, that could be referring to just the social consciousness of the society that's negative, you know, something like that. And it becomes its own pattern. It becomes its own entity in a way because it promotes itself, and it sort of like a virus, kind of like
well, I think it's because like a lot of it is related back to ego, because the ego is like a construct. It's like wearing a mask. Okay, when I go into this job, I got to put on this persona because I'm trying to get this job. This is how we get through the world. This is what we do all the time, right? But again, once we identify with the ego so hard, that what I call our true essence, our true authenticity, right? Once we forget about that and identify with our ego so hard that we forget who we are, that's when, you know, I would call emotionalism arises, right? Because you've identified with this mask, and all you can see yourself as is this mask. And anything that tries to rip you away from that, you think that you're going to lose your identity. So you hold on to that, and then your emotions get all in the way of it. And so that is like literally the definition of incoherence. And I think that plays a big role. Our emotions get the best of us, and our emotions aren't necessarily right.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit. Unpack that a little bit, because like if these underlying patterns are the real reality under it all, and we're just expressions of those patterns that spiral out, or we're the dynamic part of that pattern creation that is creating. But then it's sort of like, then where's the free will? And then if there is no free will, then what is it that's really doing the creation? Is it like this? It seems like it's the consciousness. It's the underlying form, I guess, if you want to use those words or whatever, consciousness, form, mind, mentation, whatever it is. Yeah,
I just call it consciousness. In my model, consciousness is primordial. That means it's not created. It just is. And in a way, it doesn't even necessarily precede the physical. It already holds within itself the properties of physicality. So it's kind of simultaneous. Or
I'm starting to see things a little more that way, like from reading your LFM model, and then also comparing that with what Michael Levin is saying and Donald Hoffman and people like that. It seems like that's probably more accurate to say that.
Yeah, because that kind of eliminates the whole thing. Oh, which came first or whatever.
Right.
You know, like I say, I stick to this to this one sentence that I put into my model. Go ahead, child. Go with God. Make sure you check in 30 minutes. Sorry.
I swear before God and white people, I'm going to understand this shit one day and be able to explain it better. Yeah, man, I swear before God and white people, I will do that.
You're a fool. You is a fool.
But yeah, coming up together, it makes it easier to explain because.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Sorry, got sidetracked. Man, ADHD is a motherfucker. What I was saying? Oh yeah, the consciousness cannot manifest as anything other than what it already is. Is that right? Did I say that right?
Say it again.
Consciousness cannot manifest as anything it isn't already. Let's say that. You see what I'm saying? In other words, the potential is always there already. Kind of like, is the potential that you exist already there before you existed? Or before you came into existence? Was the potential for your existence already there?
Yeah, the potential was already there.
So that's how I see it. Like consciousness is this infinite potential.
Right. Like a thought, like a big thought. Yeah.
I mean, not even a thought. Maybe it can turn into a thought, right? But at first it's more like just potential. It's just like raw data in a sense. Not even, I don't even know if you could call it raw data. I'm not sure about that. So don't quote me. I'm freestyling over here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're here to do. We're just kind of creatively thinking on the fly. And I think doing sessions like that's important because pretending like we have all the answers isn't very humble. It isn't a good way to approach life, to act like a know-it-all. Sometimes it's good to just think out loud and try to unpack stuff as you think of it. Because like when I'm thinking about that, I think of always comes back to duality. And you think of duality, and then you think of the problem. The big problem with duality is the interaction problem. Like how does the mind or consciousness interact with the physical if they're two separate things, when it seems like the most parsimonious solution was that it's either going to be all matter or it's going to be all consciousness. And it seems like it being all consciousness seems to be getting rid of the hard problem of consciousness and that interaction problem too with duality. So it seems to fix a lot of problems. But on the other hand, like you said, you've got that chicken and the egg issue where you're trying to figure out, well, what came first and how and why. So like there's always going to be some kind of problem.
Right, but I just really don't think of it that way.
Right.
I just think it's just like, you have a body and you have a mind. You can't really see your mind, but your body and your mind exist simultaneously. So the things that you do are kind of your mind, right? Because your mind is behind every expression or every action that you end up doing. So it's just like together, like there is no real separation, right? Now,
right. Because we know,
obviously,
we know what consciousness, we know what consciousness is because it's primary to us, right? Like we know what it's like to be something. We know what an experience is like intimately, primarily. And then on the other hand, when you start talking about objects within your conscious experience, say like physicality, you can't talk about what is matter, what is physical. Though the best you can say is these are just words or labels we put on some of the things we see or observe in our conscious experience.
I mean, I can't even really truly say I know what consciousness is, to be honest. Like, I just try to make sense of it in the best way I humanly can. And I mean, who knows what the hell? Like, I don't know. We don't know. We're not even saying that. We just know that as far as how we define consciousness in this physical experiences, that consciousness is a subjective experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Qualia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, qualia, the quality.
And that's all we know. We know that we have an experience, and we know that we're where, right?
And we're never
But as some
outside
say,
of, and we're never
like I
outside of
said,
our consciousness. You know, we never get outside of our consciousness to have like this objective view of what the differences are between the physical and the conscious experience of the physical. We're never outside of it to make that sort of determination, because we're all locked inside of our conscious interface.
but maybe there just isn't no outside shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That could be.
That might be
could
what
be.
that might be what the Jesus man said, you know. The kingdom of God is within. It's all within consciousness.
Yeah, yeah. Christ consciousness, right?
But there's always the slight chance, as some would say, that none of this ever happens.
Yeah. Yeah, we just might be mistaken. We might not exist at all or be conscious at all. Maybe we're just confused.
And even to be confused, you would have an experience. So you can't even say that. Like, I mean, it's just, I don't know what you guys think. Any comments? Anybody want to call in or what? Because we're kind of running out of steam here.
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
on 2 hours and 1 minute.
Yep. Yeah, I think everybody's just kind of probably just sitting back enjoying the conversation, you know. And yeah. But yeah, I think I've run out of gas on this whole thing, and you know, I think it was a great conversation. It was a great show.
Yeah.
I enjoy these kind of conversations, man.
I enjoyed myself. I always look forward to this every oh, someone said something. Hold on. Okay. Someone said, oh, Joel saying stuff too. Someone said, I just love Jung's beliefs of
collective consciousness.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yes. And what did Joel say? Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Atheos. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Oh, I think he missed. So he said, sorry, I wasn't able to listen closely. Okay. You can always rewind, you know, we always say here at the Mirror Point, you know, be kind, rewind your thoughts.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say, I'm very happy about how everything's running smoothly. It looks way better today. You got a new laptop. I seem to have fixed the issue on my laptop, and this looks great. I like the background and everything. So yeah, it's looking really good.
Yeah, man, we're stepping it up, guys. And yeah, if you like our content, please like and subscribe. And if you want to learn more in depth about non-dualism, idealism, the differences between these things, and sort of where we're coming from, please get my book. It's in the description again. And Joel says, y'all got anything you want to argue about? I don't know, man.
Not today, Joel. Not today. You're having a nice, peaceful day today.
No Joel today.
Maybe next week. Day, Joel.
I want to have a debate fest one day where we all get on and we just fucking
argue. We've been having too many what's the word? Not condensation. I know that's not the right word.
No. That reminds me of that In Living Color, you know, when that dude, the black dude, he goes and he uses all these big words. You know, it's like the condensation of the manipulation of the situation. He just making words up.
I think what I was gonna say is confrontation. A lot
confrontation, of confrontation.
Not condensation, because that's like that wet shit, right? The water, whatever.
I'm sticking with condensation. I like that better. I'm getting tired of all this condensation around here, man.
I'm tired of this condensation, Joe.
Yeah.
No, that don't sound right either. Let's not go there.
All this
Anyway.
condensation is good for subscribers and views, man. We need more condensation.
Yes, confrontations. That's right.
That's right. All right, guys, we are out of here, man. Yeah. Y'all be good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.